Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Crawley Town Supporters Alliance Simply Reds podcast. My name is Reuben, and as always, I'm joined by Louie. You doing all right, Louie?
Evening, Reuben. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not doing too badly, thank you. I mean, there's
Good.
lots and lots for us to talk about in a short space of time since the last pod. But
Indeed.
before we do, want to do a quick shout out to two of our listeners, Ryan and Matt, who watched the podcast and have said it's the highlight of their week, which is very, very kind of them. So
Very
do feel
kind.
free to, if you are listening, anyone, feel free to send any comments to us on social media, or if you bump into us at Newport or amongst the
Positive
hundreds of
feedback, though.
others.
If you think I'm an idiot and I talk too much and all of that stuff, I don't want to hear it.
Or if you prefer one of our rival podcasts as well, don't let us know.
Yeah, we absolutely, yeah, especially that. We do not want to hear it. Yeah,
So we've got a new manager.
we do indeed.
I mean, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would not have put any money on Colin Kazim Richards taking over Crawley.
No,
I mean, he
that
just came out of nowhere.
it's one of the most left field appointments I can ever think of, not just at Crawley, but in the entirety of the Football League, for as long as I can remember, for as long as I have been following football for the last 25 years now. I mean, 24 years or so. I'm 28 now. My first memories of football from when I was 4 years old. And this is one of the, even for Crawley standards, this is one of the weirdest appointments I can think of. Like, there's not too many that, it's got to be in the top five. I think that there's got to be like articles on, Sport Bible or BBC or something where it's like top five weirdest Football League manager appointments. And this will be up there. This will be number four or number three. It is utterly, and I don't even mean this in a judgmental or negative way, but it is just very left field. It is absolutely bizarre in terms of everything you thought we would look for in an appointment, having sacked Scott, as we talked about last week. And we did touch on the sort of manager we'd be looking for, and the sort of names that we mentioned, Darren Ferguson, Adam Hinchelwood. I don't think any of us even, I don't think anyone had thought about Colin Kazim Richards. And again, don't mean this in a
No.
horrible way, but for I just, where has it come from? But yeah, he is
Yeah.
our new manager until the
And,
end of the
and and
season, at least.
and the weird thing is, the club approached him as well, which I find that even like stranger. It does almost remind me of when we hired, was it, who is it? It was either Kevin Betsy or Rob Elliott, and Preston said like on their stats, he was like the
That was
equivalent of
Rob
like
Elliott. Yeah,
Mourinho or Guardiola or someone like that.
yeah. I think at least with the Rob Elliott appointment, there was some logic in it. Played a similar system with limited resources in only, all right, only the National League, but as we all know, the National League is a lot stronger these days than it used to be. And there was it wasn't the weirdest appointment. It wasn't an appointment that made you go, "What on earth?" To the same extent, at least. Like, this is, yeah. I mean, it's raised, I think, a lot of eyebrows. Yeah, I think I'm struggling to put into words quite how. I mean, I suppose this time last week, it was announced on, was it late Monday night, wasn't it? So I think it wasn't long after we'd recorded. Or was it Tuesday night? Was
I
it
think it was
Tuesday night? 'Cause I
Tuesday
think
night.
yeah, because the rumours had started in the afternoon, and Sky Sports and talkSPORT and Pete O on Twitter, who's always very reliable for sort of breaking Football League news, and he was the first one to sort of mention it. And when he, I mean, that's basically means it's as good as done. A lot of the time
Mm.
when he posts something like that, and I just thought to myself, this is not, this can't be. It was just, yeah. I'm a little bit speechless, as is obvious, but it's an interesting appointment, and he's an interesting bloke. I think I've kind of
Yeah.
warmed to him. I've warmed to him because he's one thing that's come across from the press conference he's done. It's unorthodox. He's not got your typical manager's way of speaking and cliches and certain phrases and kind of things that are straight out of the FA coaching manual.
Mm.
but he's very down to earth. I think he comes across as quite emotionally intelligent, which I think is really important in terms of man managing skills and getting the players on board, because that was a big concern. A lot of them were Scots players. A lot of them, I think, were still playing for Scott. That much was evident. The poor run of form. I think the effort levels and the desire and the willingness to play for the manager was still there. So I think that was part of why I thought it was a big risk sacking him. And then you don't know how the players are going to respond to someone new. But I think in a way he's the sort of character that the players probably will quite like, because he's young. He can probably relate to a lot of them. He seems very personable and down to earth, despite having had a ridiculous career all over the world. Playing in the Premier League, playing in Turkey and I think Brazil and all sorts of places. And I do find myself warming to him as a person. So it's one where I'm not convinced it's the right appointment. Certainly in the long term, for the next 6 games now, you have to judge him on his results and the performances. But yeah, first impressions were very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, we saw in the interview. There were definitely some quotes floating around on the internet, weren't there?
Yeah,
Such as, "When is the right time to have a baby?"
well, that's what I mean.
And I think it's definitely probably one of the most riskiest managerial appointments Crawley ever made.
It's a huge risk. Yeah,
I mean, you talk about an article on Sports Bible. I mean, this is a typical football manager years 2052, and Crawley have
literally.
hired Colin Kazim Richards as their manager in League One.
Yeah, it's honestly, it is like life imitating art in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think
it is.
you brought up that quote. I think it was his sort of first media appearance, wasn't it? And he said, when's the right time to have a baby? When's the right time to get married? When's the right time to become a football manager? And I think that's what I mean. It's the most relatable thing a manager's ever said, because pretty much everyone will have those thoughts, like at some point. Maybe not the football manager bit, but everyone will think, oh, when's the right time to get married, or when's the right time to start a family? And so for him saying that, it is quite. I think it's just very unfiltered and very down to earth, which I think is interesting, because a lot of managers are very filtered and very guarded about what they say most of the time. So when you get someone who's a little bit off the cuff or a little bit, just not really media trained, and just it's a bit of a novelty in that sense. And so
Yeah.
very.
Um,
Sorry, go on.
and there was also the quote. There was also the quote. I think that's probably been misinterpreted. But it's the fact that he doesn't believe in formations, and the fact football is all about formations. But I think what he was more trying to aim at is he doesn't necessarily go in. He doesn't do what Carl Scott did. I was yeah, I'm just going to stick to this formation, and that's going to be who I am.
Yeah,
Whereas for him, I don't think there is that reliance on this is going to be my formation. I think that's kind of willing to adapt, which potentially might have been the shortfall for Scott, and that he wants to play players in their best position, which I know is kind of quite easy to say and quite obvious. But it was interesting kind of hearing those words from him.
yeah, definitely. It's something I was thinking about earlier. Scott was obviously a man who was. I don't think this isn't uncommon for a manager, so this isn't necessarily a criticism of him. But he was also a man who he had his ways. He had a system that he believed would work for him and has worked for him in the past. But I think this season, because of the recruitment, we didn't quite have the players to play that way in the same way that we did a couple of years ago when we got promoted. We haven't replaced Liam Kelly. We don't have a Liam Kelly type player. We don't really have a Will Wright type player on the right. We don't have a Jeremy Kelly who can help us build out from the back. We haven't had a Corey Adai who can step up and help the help the defence build out. Kind of playing through the middle of the pitch and keeping possession that way hasn't worked. I mean, the amount of times in games this season where we spent ages just going long, long balls up to Orsi who's on his own with no support, because Lolos has had to drop a bit deeper. and suddenly both Orsi and Lollis are so far apart from each other. If you think back to that side a couple of years ago, Orsi nearly always had Campbell and Lollis really close to him, so that the ball came to him, and one of them would be supporting him, and we'd be able to get up the pitch that way if we needed to. Because we haven't got that sort of progression through the midfield, because we're lacking a Liam Kelly type, and there's been such an injury disrupted squad as well. I think we've just struggled to play that way. But obviously Scott could have been pragmatic and kind of gone a different way. It's what he did when he first came in the 22-23 season, when he kept us up, and he played a 4-4-2. And I've heard off the record, well, on the record now, I suppose, that he absolutely hated it. He absolutely hated playing 4-4-2. But I think it was he just saw it as a necessary evil to kind of keep us up, and he didn't have the players at the time to play the way he wanted to. And so there's an argument that perhaps he should have changed tack in recent weeks to try and cover those deficiencies in the squad where we're not able to play out from the back. We haven't got those players. Maybe he thought we did. Maybe he genuinely believed that we actually could play that way, and he couldn't understand why it wasn't working, in which case, that's a whole different conversation. But I'm saying all that to come on to kind of the approach we've taken under Colin in his one game so far, where we went 4-4-2. We weren't quite direct. It wasn't quite Sam Allardyce at Bolton, pure, direct hoofball, Brexit ball, call it what you want. It was it was a bit more measured. It was just getting the ball forwards quickly into Orsi and Toby Adeyemo, who I thought linked up quite well for the time they played together. Until Orsi came off. Orsi certainly was more involved, and he didn't look as isolated, and we were able to get the ball up the pitch and get it out wide. I think we lacked a bit of quality in the final third. I think that was what let us down. We didn't quite know what to do when we got the ball out wide, or when we did have them pinned back. I think there were some things to like about the performance. We were organised. We were pretty compact. We put bodies on the line. We worked hard. We got Orsi involved more until he came off, which is a worry, obviously. Yeah, but ultimately, I think I don't know if we deserve to win 2-0. I think it's a game that possibly could have gone either way. Neither team really showed a lot of quality. And I'm saying all this, we haven't even touched on the fact that we did actually win.
Yeah,
Colin Kazimich's first game in Football Management. And we won
2-0. Tie now.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth kind of praising Colin for this win. I mean, I think this would have been the atmosphere would be completely different had we have lost that. Had we have lost that game, it would have turned nasty. Pointing fingers at the owners about the decision of hiring the manager, calling names on the players, on the manager. And it's worth mentioning about just playing staff. The fact that Jamie Day's still around, which I think people were surprised about. And also Julian Gray coming in, who's a bit of a seasoned pro around kind of these levels and higher up. And so we welcome both of them we welcome Jamie's still at the club, and Julian as well, to the club. But before we touch on the match, Colin has had quite a life. He's been at 15 or 20 different football clubs. He's been dubbed the Coca-Cola Kid after a fan of Brighton, a guy called Aaron Berry. £1,000, £250,000, for Brighton to buy a player, and they ended up buying Kazim Richards from Berry. And he's gone round loads of different clubs throughout the world. But I mean, even his personal life, he lost his infant brother to Edwards syndrome, and also 3 cousins in unrelated incidents or heart attack while playing football. One of them died in a brain hemorrhage in the bathtub, and another in a car crash. So I mean, it must have been a traumatic childhood for him. But he's got some fairly famous relatives. So his cousin is Andros Townsend, and his uncle is Troy Townsend, the person who's worked very heavily with the Kick It Out campaign. So who knows? Maybe Colin might ask a favour of his cousin Andros. And might come in January or in this summer to help support us.
Yeah, well, I did have that thought myself when I realised they were related. Yeah, it's a hell of a backstory. He's lived about 20 different lives there. He's been to more places and gone through more than a lot of people do, which is I think probably sets you up. This might sound a bit flippant considering some of the more tragic things he's been through, but I think it does make you resilient. I would expect, and I think it does possibly set you up. I think you have to be quite resilient and thick-skinned as a manager. You have to have a lot of conviction and self-belief and toughness. A lot of mental sort of mental toughness. And so I imagine I would hope that if anything has come of that in terms of the positive thing, it is that he's resilient with a lot of life experiences in different places, in different teams, in different changing rooms, which I think probably is quite a good grounding for someone who wants to go into a coaching career in that sense. The different the different changing rooms and the different seasons and teams and places he's been to. And yeah, just very. I mean, obviously the big concern is his actual lack of coaching experience. Comes in having only really been I think it's a specialist skills coach with Arsenal's under-16s. So when we brought in Kevin Betsy, that ill-fated 18 game spell or whatever it was, he had actually managed Arsenal's under-18s. Again, not the most extensive experience, but actually leading a team and being in charge of the team and tactics and selections. When we hired Rob Elliott, he'd at least managed Gateshead for a year at National League level. I can't remember what Matthew Etherington's experience was, but I think he was under 23s manager at Peterborough at the time. So, but again, not the most extensive, but yeah, the point being, I think this is very risky, and it's. I mean, we'll never know. We will never know if Scott could have kept us up. It wouldn't surprise me had Scott been in charge on Saturday if we'd have won. And I say that because I don't think the performance was really much better than what we've seen under Scott recently. I think the result was obviously great and 2 really well taken goals, but the performance itself, I would have probably expected that had Scott been in charge. Obviously, a different style, a different way of playing. In terms of the chances we created, which weren't many, they were few and far between, and the sort of bodies on the line and everything in between, it wasn't too dissimilar to what we'd seen in recent weeks under Scott. I think sometimes things go your way. You get a good goal from outside the area, the game opens up for you, and it's in injury time, and the game opens up for you, and you're able to hit the opposition on the counter. So yeah, there were things that we did better, and I think there were things that we didn't do as well compared to Scott. And I'm not going to I'd like to think I won't constantly make comparisons to Scott as the next few weeks go on, because that is in the past. But yeah, I think it's a natural comparison to make after his first game in terms of like I said, I think there were things to like about the performance. I thought we got Orsi more involved. I thought it probably played to the strengths of the squad a little bit more. In terms of Toby Adeyemo, I thought had a good game, held the ball up well, obviously took his goal really well.
Definitely.
I don't think he's someone that defenders enjoy playing against. He's big, he's mobile. He's a good target man. He's a good platform if you are going to play a bit more direct. He's someone you want because he's not just a big unit. He's able to bring the ball under control and get the ball, bring other players into play, which is what you want. Which is something that we've possibly struggled with at times this season. Naming no names, Ryan Loft. So yeah, I think that there were things to like, and obviously the most important thing, massive 3 points considering everyone else around us seemed to win, bizarrely. So yeah, really massive 3 points, and definitely. And there's also part of me that thinks I always think performances are really important because they are the best indicator of your future success. But at this point in the season, with now 6 games to go, we could be terrible in every game, win 1-0 in every game, and I would not care. It is simply about the 3 points. It's about making yourself tough to beat and finding a way to win. And for the first
Yeah,
time is that the first time in 11 games we found a way to do that?
it's
Just
something
in
like that.
time as well. I think it was 10 games without a
Yeah,
win when
I mean,
Scott left. So yeah,
it was all going to be a surprise at what is it 1:45 when the starting 11 comes out as to who is going to play for us, and there were quite a few surprises, like just seeing Copley starting. Also, the fact that Max Anderson was on the bench as well. I mean, whether they both would have been available for this game, whether it had been Scott, whether it had been Colin, but interesting that they have
yeah,
both come back. And also, I think in the training videos we've seen Louie Watson there, and Ben Radcliffe, who has now been recalled, although he's got an injury. So there's
yeah.
definitely been
It's
some changes already.
yeah, it's interesting. It's yeah, Louis Copley starting, having not been in the squad. I think we all just assumed he was injured because he had
Mm.
picked up a couple of injuries. So him coming back and starting, and I think he played pretty. He played, what was it? It was a good 70 odd minutes. If I think he, from off the top of my head, I'm just going to have a quick look now. But so for him to get through, he came off on 74 minutes. So yeah, came off on 74 minutes for Max Anderson. For him to get through that amount of minutes, considering he hadn't played really in the last 6-7 weeks, whatever it was, really, yeah, surprising. It makes you wonder whether he'd been fit for longer and just hadn't been able to get back in the squad, whatever it might be. Again, yeah, Max Anderson coming back, really important. And, he was someone who he's been out of the squad. At times he fell out his form that favour, and then when he has forced his way back in, he's then been really unlucky with injuries. So you have to feel for him there. So yeah, I think it was interesting the way we set up in a 4-4-2. I think it probably suited our midfielders a little bit better because the game's a little bit more in front of them. Certainly someone like Jay. I think Jay's someone who likes the game in front of him. He likes to be able to break play up and snap into challenges. We all know he loves a challenge, but he's someone he's always better when the ball is in the opposition half, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So yeah, I think, and you mentioned earlier about that sort of quote that was a bit misconstrued from Kazim Richards in his first bit of media where he said, "I'm not a formations man." I think it definitely was misconstrued because I think a lot of managers, even at the very top level, will say they don't really think too much about a formation as such. As it sounds a bit silly. I think it's quite hard to describe. But if you ask Pep Guardiola if he plays a 4-3-3, he'd probably just say, "Well, what's a 4-3-3?" I play. My
Mm.
players do one thing when we have the ball, and they do a different thing when we don't have the ball. They do a different thing when the opposition's in their own half and when we're defending in our own half. At saying, you have to have a strict 4-4-2 formation or a strict 4-3-3 or whatever, 3-5-2, it's not, it's probably just not, it's not as that simple. So I think that's probably what he was saying. And his point about, getting players in the best positions was, I think, actually probably the most encouraging thing from that because kind of sort of what we've already touched on or what I've already said about how Scott probably should have been a bit more pragmatic this season, not having the player. We didn't have the players to really play the way he wanted in the system that he wanted. So maybe setting up slightly differently and going a bit more, trying to go a bit more direct with intentionally rather than going direct as a
Mm.
result of not being able to play out from the back properly would have been probably maybe the smarter move. Yeah, I think obviously proof will be in the results and the performances over Easter weekend. It's a massive weekend. I'm sure we'll come on to that in a bit. But if you're Colin Kazim Richards on Saturday night, you're probably the happiest man in the world. You're absolutely buzzing because I think he would have probably seen a lot written and a lot said about him, and that would have getting off to that sort of start and also winning in the way that we did with 2 injury time goals. There is very I say there are very few feelings in football that are better than that.
Yeah, in the world.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, quite. You know what? Yeah, quite possibly in the whole world. You know, your first baby, probably not. Like, I'd rather have a last minute winner personally. I kid.
No pun intended.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, didn't even mean that. Yeah, it's he would have been absolutely buzzing. I'm quite pleased for him. Obviously, you know, I think there's a bit of relief. I think at the end, from I certainly felt it in the series. There was just relief because I think we all knew, everyone had an eye on the other results. Everyone knew what was going on elsewhere. I think there was. I'm sure there must have been a point at which we were in the relegation zone because I'm sure there must. So just again looking at League Two results, yeah, there must have been a point where,
No, I don't. I don't think so.
because it felt like everyone else around us was winning. Barrow were winning. Mind you, we've got a better goal difference than Barrow, so I think goal difference actually, yeah, we would
Yeah,
have kept us out of it. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, a great start,
yeah.
and
I feel sorry for any fans who left in like the 85th minute, as some fans do.
never leave
Um,
early, especially at 0-0. It's
Never
just
leave early.
well, you know what I mean. Like,
Is
I
that
mean,
Louie who's saying that?
leaving 3-0, leaving at half time 3-0 down is probably a bit different to leaving at 0-0 on the 85th minute. We all know that anything can happen at 0-0.
Exactly. And again, worth shouting out Chapman. Another great performance. So I don't know what's better, his performance or his knee slides. I think his knee slides to
His
celebrate.
celebrations, considering he's a man who's not really involved in the goal scoring side of things, you know, it's not part of his remit as a goalkeeper. He absolutely loves celebrating a goal. Yeah, his knee slide for the equaliser against Swindon, and then his celebration, particularly for the second goal, where I'm sure at one point, I'll have to watch it back, I'm sure at one point he was just doing laps of the goal. He just didn't really know what to do. Considering he's a lone player as well, his obvious just commitment and willingness to just be part of the team and get involved. I think being a lone player and going to a team the league below you in a relegation scrap, I reckon it's probably really easy to like check out mentally and go, do you know what, this
Mm,
doesn't affect me because I'm going back to Huddersfield next season. This does not matter to me at all. But he's genuinely emotionally invested as a player, which is always really endearing. And yeah, he didn't. Yeah, he made a couple of smart stops. We didn't give Gillingham too many opportunities, which yeah, again, I think being hard to beat is going to be really important over the next few weeks because if we can't win, then you know, if say we go to Newport, a point would be really valuable at Newport. A win would obviously be incredible, but you know, in the sort of situation you're in, I think we had kind of nearly got there under Scott. There was a lot of draws in that sort of 10 game spell. I think half of them were draws, in fact. And so I think we'd become a little bit harder to beat. We were certainly a bit more, I don't want to say solid defensively, but we were more switched on defensively, I would say. But just without that sort of bit of quality up front to get us over the line in certain games. And I do think that could still be the case. You know, I didn't see anything on Saturday that made me think we'd massively improved, but you know, we were on the right end of the football gods, so to speak.
mm.
On Saturday, things went out. You know, a shot that might have been saved by the keeper or hit the post, as has been the case over the season, or you know, we've taken it, and then a one-on-one chance, which we've missed plenty of this season. We've missed plenty of good chances this season, we've taken it. And Scott's probably watching that, thinking, well, why won't we putting these goals away when I was in charge? Um,
And actually, as you watch those goals back, that second goal, that build-up play, I thought it was almost very reminiscent of kind of a Scott Lindsay team.
yeah, it was a little
Um,
bit. If he was watching, he would have. I don't know whether he would have been having a little bit of pride in the fact that there's still that little Scott Lindsay in the team, or possibly just absolutely fuming that they couldn't have done that for him at Fleetwood or in any of the recent games.
Yeah.
I mean, a penny for his thoughts, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough situation for Colin because, I mean, he came in on Tuesday. So let's say he would have had 3, maximum 4 training sessions. And
players get
so
the Tuesday or is it the Wednesday off?
I think potentially Wednesday off.
I think Wednesday's most clubs do Wednesday, don't
Okay,
they?
let's say he had maximum 3 training sessions then with these players. That's not long at all.
No.
And so for us to have got, I think even had you have drawn on Saturday, I think that still would have been quite a good result. But for us to have won that, and it's a tough one because at the end of the day we need to be winning these games. A draw probably, whilst I would have probably taken it, might not have been good enough.
No. We've had a lot of those recently. We've had a lot of draws. We thought, that's not a bad result in isolation. We drew against a decent Swindon team. We drew against a decent Barnet team. And then you think, but it's just not enough. We keep drawing these games.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how we perform at Newport. And I think it's probably worth touching on Newport now. I mean, firstly, the fact we're bringing over 500 people there. I think we've sold over 450 tickets so far. We're bringing 4 coaches. Which again, and fair play to the players, to the staff, to the owners for doing that, and for helping kind of fund or part fund the coaches. Because again, I think it just shows how important this game is on Friday. Hopefully, it's a good Friday for us and a bad Friday for Newport.
Indeed, I think. Yeah, we it's another Hartlepool away, isn't it? It's another one where perhaps less do or die than Hartlepool's very much.
I think so.
Winner takes all, because if we won that game, we were effectively safe. Whereas, obviously, if we don't win this game, we're still, or even if we lose, it's still probably in our hands, and it's not, there's still 5 games to go afterwards, including, I want to say 3. Is it 3 home games we've got coming up?
Something like that. Yeah, it will be.
Yeah, so 3 of our last 5 games are at home against Shrewsbury, who have nothing to play for. Against Grimsby, who may well be in the hunt for, they are very much in the hunt for that last playoff spot. And then we've got Salford on the last day, who are possibly, they're possibly chasing automatic promotion. So actually, those home games aren't too great, but it's the fact that we've got 3 games at home, and we know that when we get going at home, we're very hard to beat, which is encouraging. And I think, off the top of my head, the last time we played Newport away was Easter weekend in that promotion season, and we won.
It was
4-1.
Something like that.
Yeah, opened the scoring after 3 minutes, and then Cerula scored. Adam Campbell scored.
Is it Lawrence Maguire?
Yeah, Lawrence Maguire. Yeah.
Yeah. If we both said it must be true.
Was it Cerula? I feel like it was Maguire or Cerula scored. I think it was. Either way, it was. That was probably the game where everyone was like, okay, we're actually, we're a really good side, because we went there and saw them apart, really. I don't really know how to feel. It's a game that I'm absolutely dreading. I'm not built for these big occasions. The playoffs a couple of years ago, I was an absolute nervous wreck. I'm not someone who deals with the nerves very well, but so it's a game that I'm absolutely dreading. Obviously, even if we do lose, it could still well be in our hands. Barrow will still be above Barrow potentially, providing they don't win. And they go to MK Dons, which is a not the easiest fixture. But then, you wouldn't have said Barrow would have beaten Bromley at the weekend. You would have thought that was an absolute no chance. That was a banker. That was one that you stick in your acca. You go, right, Bromley going to go and turn Barrow over, and very much wasn't the case. So, yeah, I'd hate to make predictions going into it, because I simply don't know what to expect. And I think Newport are probably they're far from the worst team in the league at this point. They're better than Barrow, they're better than Harrogate, they're better than Tranmere. They're probably maybe better than us at this point. We just have to. I really don't know. I'm struggling to articulate. The more I think about it,
Yeah.
and I haven't really thought about the Newport game up until this evening, the more nervous I am. It is
So
just
so just
massive.
just for those historians, it was Dion Conroy, Ronan Darcy, Lawrence Maguire, and Adam Campbell that
Ah,
scored to win 4-0. Um,
that was it.
but yeah, I think it's gonna be it's a huge match. I mean, it's Christian Fuchs v Colin Kazim Richards are probably two clash of the managers that I don't think anyone had on their score sheets
It's
at the beginning of
when
the
you put it
season.
like that, it is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, like two ex Premier League players at the bottom of League Two, possibly
Yeah,
a decisive game in the relegation battle, and yeah, probably not what they saw themselves. If you'd gone to them like 5 or 10 years ago when they were still playing, or at the peak of their career, you're going to be managing Newport and Crawley in a relegation battle in 2026. Yeah, not exactly where they they would have seen themselves, I reckon. Yeah, Newport
no, not at all.
under Christian Fuchs have got picked up a point a game, which is not great, but over a season it's probably enough to keep you up. Well, it's definitely enough to keep you up. So yeah, they've definitely improved under him compared to the start of the season, where they were under different management and they were a pretty terrible side. I think their only win at one point was against us, because of course it was. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. I think I would gladly go there and take a point, purely because I think Barrow will lose MK, and so it's just another point away from the relegation zone. Harrogate will go to Grimsby, and again another really tough game. So it it's yeah, very very tough to call. I'd probably take a point with those other fixtures in mind, and going into a home game on the Monday as well. You'd have to think that possibly 4 points over Easter weekend. You know, it would be a great return.
Yeah, I mean, it's a horrible place to go, Newport. Just and more than sorry, the stadium's a horrible place to go to, um, and it's but we're going to be backed by loud Crawley fans, and I think whilst like at home games we're not necessarily the loudest. When a group of us go to away games, we can be really really loud, or at
Yeah,
least it
our
sounds
away following is
loud from within.
our away following is always great.
So
Even
hopefully we
when
get a
it's stopped
result.
in best of seasons. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, what you say, it's like 400-500 Crawley fans going, which is that's a really good turnout for a lot of games this season, but especially travelling all the way to Newport on Good Friday, probably reduced trains and everything. It's a long way to go at the best of times, let alone bank holiday weekend at the end of the season where we've been really poor, and yeah, it's fantastic backing. So absolutely well done to in advance, fair play to everyone making the journey. And yeah, and then obviously we host Grimsby on Easter Monday.
Yeah, I mean,
That's again, that's
as you
going to
said,
be a tough game.
they're fighting for the playoffs, and they've got David Artell as their manager. Probably a win percentage of 26%, 1.1 points, which is interesting compared to Christian Fuchs, who was only on 1 point per result. Yet completely different ends of the table. They've got Adam Cook. Sorry, not Adam Cook up front. Yeah, Andy Cook. Close. I was close
And you
enough.
go.
Andy Cook up front from Bradford, a player who knows where the back of the net is.
From
They
a slightly
probably
lowest
hasn't
level,
scored as
yeah.
many as he might have liked. And yeah, again, thankfully it is at home. because again, Grimsby's a horrible place to get to. So we've got that, but I mean they are on a bit of a run at the moment. Won the last two, won 3 of the last 5, and they've only lost to Oldham 1-0. So again, it will be another tough game, but hopefully we can kind of carry that momentum of the fans, the atmosphere from the previous game against Gillingham, and bring that and stick that to the Broadfield Stadium. I know kids can now go for free, I believe, for the Grimsby and the Shrewsbury match. So again, another nice touch by the owners.
That's a fantastic, fantastic idea. Not only for the next few games, but also you can bring your kid along for the first time to football, and they might get hooks in it, and that's a generation of fans that could be coming through. So that's really really good move. Whenever a club does something like that, you can only kind of get behind it really, and appreciate the gesture. And it'll be much needed because Grimsby, they are a good side. Absolutely tore us apart the opening day of the season, and they've got goals that spread out around the team. They've got Cabia, who's on 12 goals, Kieran Green on 9 goals, Charles Vernon on 9 goals. They're not a side, they're not reliant on just one player. Like I say, they've got Andy Cook, who, especially at this level, knows where the back of the net is. And I think he came in on loan in January for them, and he's picked up 4 goals already. Yeah, they've got a number of players on 4 goals. Yeah, they've got goals spread out throughout the team. They are an attacking threat. They are a good side, as we saw earlier in the season. One thing I did I've been thinking about as we've kind of been talking, if we persist with kind of the same sort of style that we saw against Gillingham, is kind of who might come in and who might thrive in that system. You can imagine Max Anderson, in the middle of midfield would really enjoy that. I can imagine Justin Ferris. He's just a very intelligent player. From what we've seen in his limited appearances, he's someone who really enjoys those battles and really enjoys picking up those second balls, and he's always in the right place to do so. So again, I can imagine he'd thrive in that sort of system where he's able to get forward and he's able to win those battles and pick up on the second balls. Yeah, I think the system, and I do wonder how we'll see it evolve over the next few weeks, because one of the things that Kazim Richards said after the game was that he didn't want to overcomplicate things. He hadn't had long enough with the players to really work on too much. It was a case of keeping it simple and kind of making sure that they were sort of well drilled in doing the basics. So I wonder.
That's sometimes what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was surprisingly kind of for such a kind of out left field, almost, what's the opposite of sensible? Nonsensical appointment in many ways. Without being disrespectful to Colin, it was actually a really sensible way of approaching the game. So I wonder how we'll see that kind of evolve over the next 6 games. Whether we'll start to see different patterns of play or slightly different style or different way of setting up.
Because also we've got Johnny. We've got Johnny Russell coming back as well.
Absolutely,
international duty. I don't quite know if he played or not, and also don't quite know what's happened to Kellen Gordon as well. He seems to have not been in the squad. Was not in the squad on Saturday. So if that was due to injury or whether it kind of just not being picked.
Yeah, I mean Kellen's injury history is. We know he's relatively injury prone, and at Crawley we do tend to pick up more injuries. So if you're an injury prone player and you come to Crawley, you become doubly injury prone. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a fitness issue and we decided not to risk him, because I do actually feel like that way of playing would have really suited him. You've got a left-footed player in front of him in Dion Pereira who wants to cut inside, and we know that Kellen just bombs forward and wants to get in behind and support the winger and get crosses in. So I think it would really suit him, that way of playing, and maybe there was a fitness issue or something there. Hopefully just a minor one, because I think he'd be a real asset in that style of play. And I think there's a lot of players who it would suit in that sense if we are going to kind of have that approach of get the ball forward quickly, get the ball out wide, do the basics. Johnny Russell's possibly another one. But we'll see. I suppose for the manager, it's a case of do I stick with what went, with what got me a result against Gillingham, or do I try and implement some different ideas as the season kind of goes on in the next few weeks? Whichever way he decides to approach it, I think the most important thing is that he does it with a bit of conviction. You can't be caught between ideas. You can't be wanting to implement new ideas and then go, actually, we're just going to go long ball, or we're going to go a bit more direct on Saturday, because it's just not going to work. So whatever he does, it has to be with that conviction and with the belief that, okay, this is what we're going to do and this is what we stick to. And what's interesting to me is kind of the final point I wanted to make was, if you look at the teams that are doing well at the top of League Two, you've got Cambridge. They're direct, they get the ball forward quickly, they get it out wide, they attack the box. Bromley, very similar. MK Dons, you'd say quite similar. Paul Warren sides are always direct. So the teams that are doing really, the top three teams in the league, Swindon are a little bit of an anomaly. They do try and kick the ball a bit more, but they haven't been as consistent this season. Top three teams in the league have all been quite old school, possibly the sort of football that you might have seen 15 years ago in League Two. And I don't mean that in a snarky or disrespectful way, but it is just interesting that the most direct teams in the league are probably the ones doing the best in terms of their, the table doesn't really lie in that sense. And I just wonder if maybe that's the best approach for us to take in the next few games. We've got someone in Toby Adeyemo who can be a really effective target man. We've got players who can play off of him. I wouldn't be against that approach for the next few games. Just get us over the line and then we go again in the summer.
Yeah, 100%. Well, hopefully we can make good on Friday. Make Friday a good Friday for us, and we can kind of start to clear away from that relegation zone. And we can begin planning for next season in hopefully League Two rather than the National League. But
indeed, because I'm not sure there is a plan for the National League from what we've heard.
But
what's on record at least.
But thanks very much, Louie, for joining me this evening.
Pleasure as always.
Let's hope for 3 points on Friday. So come on, you Reds.
Indeed. Come on, you Reds.